Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
In a world where tensions, polarization, hostility, wars just seem to be constantly increasing, the conversation we're having today couldn't be any more important. With us, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Mitch Abrams, specialist, author, guru. We're so looking forward to everything he has to share about how to deal with anger and all the emotions that surround it. So welcome, Mitch.
Thank you both for having me. I look forward to this conversation. I think it's unfortunate but accurate that the timing of this could not be any better.
Yeah, indeed. But before we jump in, as our audience knows, we have to give you your proper introduction.
For sure.
So, Jon, let's hear the bio.
All right. One of my favorite bits. Always love doing this bit. So, Dr. Mitch Abrams is a clinical and forensic psychologist whose work sits at the intersection of trauma, performance, and emotional control. With over 2 decades inside New Jersey's prison system, Mitch has seen firsthand what happens when anger goes unchecked and what becomes possible when it is harnessed well. Today, as chief psychologist for Rutgers University Correctional Healthcare, Mitch oversees mental health services across 7 state prisons. He also works with athletes, leaders, and high-pressure professionals through his private practice and training company, Learned Excellence for Athletes. At the heart of Mitch's work is a bold truth. Anger isn't the enemy. In fact, it can be a powerful tool for growth if we learn how to regulate it. Through his new book, out 2 weeks ago, I think, at the time of this recording. So congratulations to you, Mitch.
Thank you.
And the book's title is I'm Not Effing Angry. Mitch helps people adjust the flame, not suppress it, to get what they truly need in their relationships, in leadership, and in life. Whether helping a parent de-escalate with their teen or coaching a CEO to stop blowing up in the boardroom, Mitch brings a practical, no-fluff approach to emotional intelligence that's grounded in deep compassion. So, Mitch, the book has a very bold title, I'm Not Effing Angry.
You have to say it right. I'm not effing angry, right?
You got to say it with the right emphasis. You might say it slightly differently as well, but there you go.
Right.
But what's the story behind it, and why was that message so important to be bringing now?
So, over the last 25 years, I've done a lot of work with people from all walks of life with issues with anger. And very often they'd come to me because someone else decided that they should be there, right? Judge ordered me to be here. My wife said that she's going to divorce me if I don't go fix my problems. And I would ask somewhat really curiously, not accusatorily, well, why are you angry? And their response was never, well, my wife nags me, I spilled coffee on myself. It was never all of the things that would lead all of us to be angry. Instead, it was immediately defensiveness. You know, I'm not effing angry. And as Andrea has said, it's usually loud, and it doesn't stop there. And so I realized there is maybe no emotion except shame that carries more shame with it than anger. And so the hope was that when I've heard this so many times, the response was almost always the same. Yeah, you are. And it's okay. We all are. Welcome to the world, right? And so this was really more about starting the process, getting right on the right foot by normalizing and validating the emotion. I think that people don't realize how much money they leave on the table in both directions, success that they could achieve, and also opportunities that they've avoided or destroyed by not being able to adjust the flame and modulate their emotions. So the hope with this was to bring people relief. You're not crazy, or at least any more than any of us are crazy, or maybe we're all crazy. And the question is whether or not you can use your crazy to help you. And I'm absolutely certain that that's the case.
Wow. I mean, my mind's pinging off in so many directions of things I would like to know. help us off. Okay, I'll ask it this way and then we can go back. For the 20 odd years that you've been working in the prison industry, have you seen a pattern, something that if we all knew this in the beginning, maybe that, many of them wouldn't be in prison?
Absolutely. Well, let me also say that I am also convinced that all of us have had forks in the road that if we took the wrong decision, we might wind up behind bars as well. And it's interesting because people often ask me the question of, well, you work with professional athletes and you work with inmates. What do they have in common? And the answer is, well, they're human. Right?
Yep.
And I do think that an interesting thing that I found very early on, and it's been true throughout my career working in prison, is people have this idea that the folks that are in jail are big, scary, evil people. And that's the rare, rare exception. Most of the people that are in prison are decent people that have done horrible things, which all of us can relate to. All of us can relate to.
Yep.
And I think that if you pair, well, you don't have to pair it, you could just extend it. At high levels of anger, it interferes with our ability to make good decisions. So if we can consider that people sometimes engage in poor decision making when they're really angry, then it follows that if you're not able to manage your emotions, you're at greater risk for doing things that you regret. And so it's almost anticlimactic. So when I hear anyone struggling with anger, whether they're incarcerated or not, I'm more curious in the how and the why than the what. When someone says, I lost it and I did this and I did that, the details often not as important to me as how this came to be, because people annoy us all the time. All the time. All the time. Why is it that in some situations we're able to keep a cool head and other times we're not? I do think that there's biological underpinnings to it, and a lot of it has to do with the parenting that you've received and the culture that you live in. There's certainly certain segments of society that justify, if not glorify, violence, where others are more supportive of a balanced emotional approach, and that matters a lot. But what I'm trying to do is to help people become as powerful as they can be. And to me, power really comes from being unprovocable. If I can push your buttons, I can control you. Now, of course, if you have relationships, then there are people that matter to you, and those people have been watching you for many years, so they know your buttons like they can play you like a piano. And so it's kind of like a backhanded compliment. But what I want people to do is to be able to increase their self-awareness, and that can't happen unless they're first kind to themselves and accept the fact, yeah, you're human, you're going to get it wrong sometimes. I often joke that, as an anger management expert, if you followed me around, you'd go, really, Doc? You know what you're doing? And my response would be, all right, that might not have been my best my best work, but I don't often make the same mistake twice. So I think that we're often we find ourselves with a responsibility to continue to evaluate and modify as we get through life, because we're going to be thrown curveballs that we couldn't possibly have predicted or prepared for.
Yeah,
100%. We say the same thing about relationships. If you follow us around, you think, are you specialists in relationship? We're like, yeah. But hopefully our arguments get better, more caring, more kinding, and more, reconciliation happens a lot faster.
But I want to circle back to a couple of points you made earlier. Actually, you said, the people in the prison system, for example, are not necessarily the big off the charts guys. It could be regular people out there. And it just reminded me, I also spent some time in prison once. I hasten to add, working there, not as an inmate, but working with some guys in there. It was one of the remand prisons in the UK here, where people go while they're waiting for sentencing. And just talking to one of the guys, one of the inmates, he was a regular guy. He was out after work with friends, just having a drink, enjoying themselves. Something happened, a fight broke out. Somebody came up to him, said something in his face. He reacted, pushed the guy. The guy went over backwards, ended up going through a window, fell down, hit his head, dead. So he's now up for manslaughter. It's like, how did his life change just like that?
Happens
now,
a
so
lot.
just picking up in a situation like that, what's the work that you're doing here? Is it to help people? Because you mentioned the word, you said you're not helping people necessarily stop being angry, but you're offering them relief. Help me understand that piece there. What is it? What's the work trying to achieve here? Is it, how do you reprogram so you don't get angry, or how do you manage the anger? You help us on that.
Well, I think that going to what Andrea said about, learning relationships, learning how to argue better. I think that the only way you can guarantee that people will not argue in a relationship is if they don't listen to one another.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not an if, it's a how, and how do we manage this? And so what we're trying to do, and we're attacking it from, think about it on a time continuum, right? There's a reason why now is called the present. It's a gift. It's the only one we can have direct influence over. We can't change the past, although we hope to learn from it, and that gives us an opportunity to change the course of our future. So the best set of circumstances is when we increase our self-awareness, and that includes not just recognizing how we feel, but also learning what our triggers are. There are certain buttons that people push, and every time they go there, I go from 0 to 60. Because if you don't know, the problem is most people don't know where that line is of too much danger until they've gone past it. This is all learnable information. But you also have to have a really good toolbox so that when you find yourself in a situation, you find yourself starting to escalate, you're able to adjust it. And the problem is that people don't practice those skills enough so that they're ready when you need them. And it's like, I'm not asking like a basketball player to start doing downward dog at the free throw line. We're asking them to become skilled enough that they can adjust the flame to what they need. The analogy that I often use, a few things make me happier than a good steak, like a good steak. But you can't make a good steak without heat, especially high heat. What happens if you can't control the flame? You don't wind up with a steak, you wind up with a baseball glove, right? Anger is that flame. At moderate levels, we're faster, we're stronger, we have more stamina, decreases our perception of pain. In fact, I'm not sure any emotion is more singularly involved with motivation to get where we want in life than when someone tells you you're not good enough, you can't. What's the response that people have to that? Oh, yeah?
I'm going to show you.
I'll show you. That's right. And that anger can keep you driven to get things done when everybody else would quit. And so I think that people that are not able to tap into and harness their anger, there's a nuclear reactor in their belly that can keep them going to get things done. And I believe high achievers know that. But there's no reason why that has to be limited to high achievers. So this is about befriending your anger. Stop demonizing it. Stop acting like it's the enemy, because it doesn't matter what you think. It's there anyway. So you might as well befriend it and use it instead of leading to all kinds of destruction around you.
Yeah, harness it.
So of course, the question we just have to dive into is how. How do you, especially if somebody has developed this habit of exploding or even imploding, in anger and pulling away and sulking and so on, how do you harness that emotion and use it for good?
So the simple answer is it depends, right? And that would be true. That would be a good answer for almost any question. That only buys me 5 seconds to say what it depends on.
I can tell you have a doctorate. That's kind of like a PhD right, 101. It depends.
No, I'm smart enough to hedge my bets, right? No, so the thing is that you pointed to something that's really important: the habits that people have. I think that when people first start talking about managing their emotions, especially anger, they expect to read a book and be cured. It doesn't work that way. And the longer that you have done things a certain way, the more likely it's going to be resistant to change. People often want to become psychologists and come up with this deep conceptualization of why bullies bully. Oh, well, they're depressed and they're externalizing. How about more simply, if I beat you up, I have your lunch money and I like that. So I'm going to be more likely to do that again tomorrow. And the
Mhm.
more I do it, the more the bullying gets reinforced,
Yeah.
right? The person who has role models in their lives that spill anger all the time, but they're also wildly successful in business and have everything that they want, they're gonna be like, I'm gonna be like that guy or that woman.
Mhm.
And so I think that at the outset, the how has to come from a self-assessment of how we got here. What are the maintaining the circumstances that keep us doing things the way we do? And also, how motivated are we to change?
Indeed.
I think that unfortunately, most people don't learn the value of harnessing their emotions until they have a near death experience. And it doesn't have to be quite that dramatic. It doesn't have to be near death, like physical death. It could be near psychological death or near relationship death, where they go, oh crap, that almost was unfixable. And it's a shame that it comes to that before people realize that. So when people get in the door, we try to do something. It's kind of like motivational interviewing, where if I have someone who comes in and they say, "Well, I don't really have an anger problem, but my wife thinks I do." I say, "Okay, well, the first thing I'm curious is, do they have any problems anywhere else besides in their relationship? Because if they
Mhm.
don't have any problems with their anger anywhere else, it's not an anger issue; it's a relationship issue, which
Mhm.
you deal
Mhm.
with a different way." But I would say to him or her, whomever is the person that is here because someone else said them, I'll say, well, um, in this office, I outrank your wife. In your house, your wife wins, right?
Mhm.
I'm telling you, you don't need to be here. And he goes, you don't understand. If I'm not here, my wife's going to divorce me. I go, so? Do you want to get divorced? He said, no. I said, well, then I guess you want to be here, huh? He goes, oh. I said, we're making decisions all the time of what we want to do.
Mhm.
And so I almost don't care if at this moment you think you have a problem with anger or not. You care about staying married. Your wife
Mhm.
thinks this is a problem. We could consider bringing her in and me asking her experience of things. But issue number one is this only works when you decide you want to change things. And
Mhm.
sometimes it could be, the judge has got it all wrong. I wasn't even there. That's nice. Can't change it. Now, what are you
Mhm.
going to do about it?
Mhm.
And so, and versus someone who says, listen, you know what? I know I've been okay in life, but I've never gotten to where I wanted to go. Either I've not been as effective socially, I've not been as financially successful. I know that my anger is an issue. When that's the
Mhm.
person that comes in, it's easier
Mhm.
because all of the other resistance is
Yep.
already peeled away. And not surprisingly, for a lot of those folks, 10 sessions and they're like a different person because they never built a toolbox.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
once they start realizing, there's people know all the time how their body reacts when they're scared, but they don't realize their body reacts almost identically when they're angry
Yeah.
because your body's
Indeed.
doing the exact same thing. It's the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of the skills that we teach to adjust the flame are the same skills that we teach when we're trying to manage anxiety, with an important difference though. When people struggle with anxiety, they're afraid that they're in danger and they run away from it, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
when they run away, they feel better. That feeling better reinforces them running away. That's why anxiety disorders often cycle downwards, and it's very hard to break the cycle. The way you break the cycle of anxiety is you ask them to consider anger, which
Oh.
is, why don't you approach the problem? You can't outrun your demons. If you turn and face them, you're often going to find they're not as big and scary as you thought they were, right?
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's almost like a three-sided coin. Anxiety, depression, and anger are all different emotions going in different directions. So depression turns inward, you're sad, you're not motivated to do anything. Anger, you're looking to attack something. What's interesting is that what people don't want to talk about, why anger is so difficult to manage, is it feels really good when you're angry.
Mhm.
It's an empowering emotion.
Mhm.
And if you're playing sports and you physically dominate someone and now you're adulated, right? Everyone adores you. Now you're being rewarded for it. And so most people that are anxious or depressed would prefer to be angry because it feels more powerful until
Mhm.
Mhm.
they do something they regret.
Yeah.
And so So it's kind of like, all right, guys, this is part of the human condition. You have a choice of how you're going to manage it. So we could increase our awareness, because I think that most people don't realize how they feel until it's too late. Recognize our triggers and activate a plan. But the other thing that we cannot minimize is the importance of inserting a small piece of time in between when something comes in and provokes us and when we act out. And it's interesting because it's like if someone punched me in the face, it would be easy to punch them back. If I wasn't knocked out, that's the automatic response. So if the automatic response is to strike back, then real power is preventing the automatic response. And I'm not advocating people taking a beating, right? Defend yourself. But there is greater power in restraint than there is in reaction. And it's very hard to do that. That's one of the reasons why I tell people often, every phone has a hold button for a reason. There are opportunities for us to push pause on our lives just for a couple of moments so we can assess where we are emotionally, adjust our flame as we need to, strategize what we're trying to achieve here, and develop a better plan. And if you don't insert that piece of time, you're going to regret it. When I work with athletes on social media, you see this happens a lot, right? A tweet will come through, or a text will come through, and they're just keyboard warriors, and they have to respond right away. And of course, their PR folks are all wanting to shoot them, like, you're just costing me money. And so one of the rules that I taught some of these folks is the 5-minute Yo Mama rule. The 5-minute Yo Mama rule. Every one of them laugh at me when I say that. I say, well, the first rule is you can't respond for 5 minutes. Why? Because first off, it doesn't matter. 5 minutes will not change anything. Yeah. But what it does is it gives you a little bit of space to think about things. And then if you haven't calmed down enough, you can write down what you want to write, whether it's a tweet or an email or whatever. And now imagine you showed it to your mother. If your mother still approves it, have at it. But if not, trash it. And so what we're trying to do is insert a piece of time so that people can de-escalate a little bit, make better decisions, and then go ahead. Because I think that when we think about how we teach people to manage anger, of course, it's about teaching skills. And I want to talk about what skills we teach, but it's also a cognitive process. It's teaching people to predict the consequences of their behavior. Sometimes you'll hear, especially young men, say, well, I just blacked out. You didn't black out. You didn't have a seizure. You just temporarily didn't care about the consequences because you were more interested in imposing your will. We can teach people to predict the consequences. I say this all the time, and she rolls her eyes at me, but I've never won an argument with my wife. And one of the reasons why is that when things get too hot, she just gets to a point where she says, I'm not talking about this anymore. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I have things to say. And she's like, all right, we've been together for a long, long time now. I love you. You love me. We're not even going to remember what this is about in 3 weeks. And almost always she's right. Now, of course, she has an advantage because her memory is so good, is that if it is an issue in 3 weeks, she's got the details, and I already moved on, and I'm definitely losing that argument on round 2 also, right? But it's
I know that one.
Right. So, but it's a powerful message. Assess whether or not what you're fighting about is even worth fighting about. Very often we're very precious and fragile, and we overreact to things that in the grand scheme of things, it's like, why do I care? And the reason why I don't care is similar to this, why I'm not effing angry makes so much sense. People don't keep track of all of the things that they deal with through the course of a day that builds and builds and builds, right? And in a perfect world, you wake up at this level here, and then you realize, crap, my alarm clock didn't go off. And you go up a little bit. Now you're up here. Now, if you're smart, you go, I don't want to start the day that way. Let me go do some diaphragmatic breathing, maybe do some imagery visualization, listen to some nice smooth jazz that always chills me out, and get back down to the baseline. But that's not what happens. Now their new baseline is higher. And then they spill coffee on themselves. Now they're up here. And then someone cuts them off when they're driving. Now they're up here. So what's happening is the body keeps count, right? You may not be aware of it. Everybody else is aware of it because you have the energy coming off your skin.
Yeah.
And then invariably, the straw that breaks the camel's back is always the smallest, stupidest thing that everyone goes, see, you're crazy. What is wrong with you? You're getting upset because someone rolled their eyes at you. Why are you? And you're like, you don't understand. This was issue number 12 today.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is help people have the awareness to constantly be able to get closer down to baseline. Because once we get up to that point and we pop off, I call that the explosion threshold. Once we get up there, the only things that are going to stop you are medication, a lot of it, physical restraint, a lot of it, or you let it run its course. So everything in anger management is about really preventing your anger getting to the level that you explode that way. And that's about building your toolbox.
Wow, so powerful and so necessary. And I'm thinking of one particular person who's had a pattern of getting to that point, generally not like that on a day-to-day basis, but will too easily get to the point of, okay, I'm just going to blow, and whoever's there is going to feel the shrapnel. So it's been a pattern, habits developed over time. What are the tools, apart from awareness of consequence or imagining what the consequence could look like? What are the tools to help change the habits to responses that are far more helpful, especially where relationships are concerned?
Well, the first question that I would ask is if this person is not popping off all the time, it means that they already have skills, right? Because you have the opportunity. I mean, first athlete I worked with was a basketball player, and I taught him diaphragmatic breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, which I'll explain a little bit more about those in a second. And he got worse. I was like, Dwayne, what happened? And it turned out he had a shooting problem. It was not a mental problem at all. And I said, all right, that makes sense why you didn't get better, but why'd you get worse? And he said, Doc, you taught me these things, but they interrupted my superstitions, my little routine that I did. You know, I go to the free throw line, dribble, backspin, dribble, backspin, take a breath, think about grandma, and take my shot. That's what I did. You changed my routine. And it was such a powerful lesson because this was like the first athlete I worked with. And I was like, well, this is going to be a short career because I made him worse. But it's a very important lesson because the first thing you want to do is presume that they already have skills, because otherwise they would be lashing out more often. Right? So what are the skills that we're talking about? We're talking about physical de-escalation, right? So diaphragmatic breathing, which is a specific type of breathing where you have your hand on your diaphragm and you're timing it in and out. Most often you ask someone to slow down their breathing, they don't know what they're doing. In fact, because it's an involuntary act, when you ask someone to slow down their breathing, they start breathing with their shoulders. They go, and next thing you know, they're hyperventilating, right? So now on top of everything else, they're lightheaded. So diaphragmatic breathing is a deeper, fuller breathing that maximizes oxygen exchange. And the other thing that I do also when I'm teaching people these skills is I also pair it with imagery and visualization. It works very well to time your breathing with the waves coming in and out on the shore for a couple of reasons. Number one, the rhythmicity of it makes it easier. Now you have two things slowing down your breathing, because most people don't know all of the things that escalate when you get angry: your heart rate, your breathing rate, muscle tension, sweating, all of these things. If one goes up, they all go up. If one goes down, they all go down. So if we could slow down your breathing, then everything else will slow down.
Bring the rest down, yeah.
The other good thing about the rhythmicity of it is standing next to nature is very humbling. I remember my therapist said to me a long time ago, your problems seem big to you because they're your problems. And so as this story goes, if imagine you're standing next to the shore and you're watching the waves come in and out. You're not involved with that. Could you imagine if that was your job all day, making sure it goes in and out? Compared to nature, we're microscopic, right? If anybody's ever gone scuba diving and sitting in the middle with 100 feet of water above and below, you realize you could be lunch and nobody would know, right?
Indeed.
So it humbles us and puts us in appropriate perspective in life, that we're important, but we're not too important. And if we're not that big, guess what? Neither are our problems. And so the things that we think are overwhelming because of our perspective. Instead of changing our perspective and saying, all right, this is unfortunate, but we'll manage it. How do we get to manage it? And we want to be able to re-engage the brain. So we have imagery and visualization paired with diaphragmatic breathing. We also teach progressive muscle relaxation, which is a system of going from muscle group to muscle group and deliberately contracting the muscle very, very hard. Because the longer you hold a contracted muscle, the more relaxed it is afterwards. In fact, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I know when I'm having a bad day, I'm sitting in front of my computer and my shoulders are like up here because my tension sits in my traps.
Yeah, mine too.
And so you may not realize it until there's a cue, but when we're teaching PMR, we're teaching them not just to relax the muscles, but also to become more comfortable and aware with where the stress sits in their body. Because I know once I identify where it is, I can contract and then roll my shoulders, and I'll get a chill down my spine and my whole body chills out. And again, we're not looking to go to sleep. We're looking to just turn it down a little bit, right? Music can be helpful. Here's something that your audience is going to roll their eyes at, because people, when I say this, they go crazy, right? Pick up your phone. Everyone thinks that the phones are the root of evil, and they can be. They can be very distracting. But sometimes the best thing that you could do is distract yourself. Would it be healthier and better to go for a walk and take a look at nature? Yeah, we don't always have that convenience. Pick up your phone, set an alarm for 10 minutes so that you're not scrolling for 5 hours. Watch some mindless stuff. Watch kittens drop wallets into garbage cans, or dogs, like puppy dogs that sound like they're talking. I mean, who could be angry when they're looking at these things? The point I'm making is that distraction is a completely reasonable way to de-escalate yourself. You could also journal it. Some people find that writing down their issues makes things a lot better. Some people are too furious to pick up a pen. They'll snap the pencil. The point being is that you want to have as many different options as possible, and you want to make your routine as portable as possible, because as life tells us all the time, things are not so convenient, right? The old saying, man plans and God laughs, right? So you want to be in a situation that you have as many different ways. And I think the cherry on top is this worth it to me? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? Because learning relaxation skills is much harder than people realize. You have to rep it. When you're learning a new skill, you got to do it at least 3 times a week and really incorporate it, so that when you're good and pissed off, it's there and ready for you, not I have to learn it the first time.
Yeah.
And that's the key to undoing bad habits and recreating new ones. Have you ever had somebody say, okay, I'm pausing, I'm diaphragmatic breathing and so on, and then still go and do what they were planning to do anyway?
Well, of course. I mean, there you just touched on a secret, Andrea, that people don't want to really acknowledge. Not all violence has to do with anger. And in fact, let's also keep in mind, no one's ever gotten in trouble for being angry. People get in trouble for what they do when they're angry.
Indeed.
So it's the difference, or not just difference, but also the distance between the emotion and the behavior. And some people, and this is where it gets a little bit wordy, but wordsmithing is important because it's how we organize thought, right?
Yep.
So in the old days, people used to say being aggressive is bad. But if you don't know a successful person that's not aggressive, you ask any successful person, they'll tell you, I went after it. And the reason is because the opposite of being aggressive is being passive. And the success doesn't drop in your lap. So you need to go after it. But then you start to realize there's different types of aggression. Instrumental aggression, that's goal directive, that's what we really want. That's what the successful people go after. It's the tenacity, the passion. What we don't want is the reactive aggression that's connected to anger. Someone says something bad about you and you have to get up and smack them in the head. And so there are times that people will do things, and we see it in prison all the time, that you start deconstructing it backwards, and you're expecting to see someone in a rage, and you're almost surprised, if not disappointed, to go, no, this person was not out of control. You see it in especially in gang life and
Mm.
in lower SES neighborhoods where violence is it's the law of the jungle. Might makes right. And so there are times that people will be violent and impose on others while they're not angry. That speaks more to a moral development issue
Yeah.
than it does to an anger issue. And I do think that if you're doing anger management work, you have to assess someone's moral stages because we just presume that people get these skills. I mean, I think that the beauty of anger management is that these are basic life skills that we all need. And the truth is, we all learn. We just don't all learn the same way.
Yeah.
And so we need to be sensitive to where someone comes from, what their neighborhood was growing up. Are both parents in their home? How did their parents deal with anger? We see with athletes a lot where coaches will get really upset when their athlete jumps off sides or gets a red flag or something. And you look at the coach and they're a raging lunatic themselves, right? and so we need to be sensitive to the environment that we're in and aspire. And I really mean that, because when I say that, I certainly have not managed my anger well throughout my life. I'm better at it than I used to be, but I aspire to master it. And the reason why I use the word aspire is because I'm constantly trying to grow with it, but I don't beat the crap out of myself when I get it wrong.
Yeah.
I don't like apologizing. And when you have a wife that you never win an argument with, you find yourself apologizing a lot. John's smiling; he knows, right? And so because it's not that I have a problem admitting that I'm wrong. I just don't enjoy it. So then I start trying to do things to avoid doing something that I'll have to apologize for. It's about not waiting till we're 70 before we have wisdom. We should aspire to become more self-aware and aware of how people experience us so that we can master the things that we're trying to master in life. And I think it all really boils down to how we navigate relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. We're challenging so many things here today. Just the established ways of thinking. I love the idea of anger isn't necessarily bad. How do you harness it? How can you use it for good? Now, I know one of the core ideas in your book is that anger can actually be used as an antidote to trauma. Now, that sounds
I was going to ask the
counterintuitive.
trauma question.
Help us understand that piece there.
Yeah.
Okay, it is counterintuitive on the face of it, but when I explain, think of it this way. Trauma is all about trying to avoid what already happened to you, right? Now, if it was just so simple to say it's in the past, no big deal, who cares? Then nobody would have any symptoms from trauma.
Right.
The problem with trauma is it's not in the past. It's in the present.
It's living with you. Yeah.
Right. And it's an anxiety response. And it's anxiety by definition is an irrational fear. Okay. It doesn't mean you weren't in danger there, but very often a cognitive distortion that survivors of trauma will often say is it happened to me then, so it's going to happen to me now, which is not necessarily true. Well, so long as you are symptomatic, whoever hurt you continues to impact your life. Aren't you effing tired of that? Aren't you fed up? And when you are, and you turn around and face the dragons, you realize you can take them. There's an interesting piece to this. When we think about symptoms of trauma, and most people don't know this, so this might be really eye-opening to people. When people have really bad things happen to them, and they have nightmares, and they have flashbacks, and they have intrusive thoughts, what your brain is doing is your brain is trying to relive it with a better ending. Okay? And in fact, the most effective forms of trauma treatment are about exposure therapy. You can't run away from it. You need to get through the story, because very often what will happen is when you're thinking about it, it'll get to a certain point and you'll go, oh, this is too much. And you give up. And then you're reinforcing the avoidance. Versus when you get to that point that it's stuck, are you satisfied that this person that hurt you has continued to impact your life? I am fed up with it. Then attack this issue. Let your mind do what it's trying to do. Finish the narrative, because Edna Foa's work on prolonged exposure therapy shows that when people get through the story, It only takes a dozen times or so when you get through the story for the flashbacks and the nightmares to decrease, because now you're mastering it. And what's stopping you from mastering it is the fear is winning. Don't be afraid. Turn and fight. And for the therapist, I'm in your corner. We'll fight together. So the anger winds up being a mobilizing force that helps you turn to fight the demons and win them and take your life back.
And just to continue the thought of the link with anger and trauma, do you find, or what percentage of cases would you say the display of anger or the explosion, the moments of eruption, are fueled by trauma that's undealt with? Or
A lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of it, Andrea. And I think that what makes it worse is that it goes to what I was saying earlier about the shame that goes along with any angry or violent act. It is incredibly empowering, I think. And everything with the treatment of trauma is really about empowerment. When you say to someone, wow, I get it. If I was in that situation, I would be just as pissed as you are. The question is, how angry do you want to be and for how long? And when you ask someone that question, it seems like the first time you're having a conversation about having any control over your anger at all. In fact, a guy that I was working with not that long ago was really on the verge of killing several people. And I said to him, I said, because when he's telling me how he's feeling, and there's a huge difference between saying I want to kill someone and I'm going to kill someone, right? So he tells me how he's feeling and what he's thinking about. And I say, all right, I get it. And he goes, what do you mean you get it? You're not going to hospitalize me? No, you're angry. I'd be angry too. I get it. Congratulations. Now you realize you're angry. Now what do you want to do? You want to ruin your life because of it? Your family needs you, you know. You see this sometimes in extreme situations where, a daughter is sexually assaulted and the father wants to go kill the guy, which is about as normal of a reaction as you could think of, right?
Yeah.
But then who's going to take care of your little girl when you're in prison? Right? And so I think it's very powerful when people are expecting, first off, I've been stuffing this. I'm finally saying out loud how pissed I am. And now they're expecting to be judged negatively for being angry. And when you say, no, sounds about right, it immediately purges the valve on the top of the pressure cooker. They're expecting to be judged, and you give them the finger wag of what the hell is wrong with you. Say, no, I get it. I understand why you're angry. I probably feel the same way. I don't know, honestly, if I would be as well controlled as you are right now.
Yeah.
Right? That immediately, once you normalize it, once you validate them, their need to act on it decreases immediately. You say, okay, you're angry. Good reasons to be angry. What do you really want to do about it? What are your goals? Well, I want to feel better. I don't blame you. I want to feel better too. I mean, it's like, why do people drink alcohol? Because you feel better. I can't blame someone for wanting to feel better. It's all the other problems that go along with it that's the issue.
Yeah.
Right? So when you say on a very primitive level, I understand. But you have decisions that you can make on how you're going to manage your emotions, how you're going to harness it to do good things with this. Or you could burn it up. But you should know that once we're talking about it, you can't blame anyone else. Now you understand how you feel. Now you have real power and responsibility. And if you choose to just pop off, you can. But those consequences are going to be there. It's just not the case when people are violent that the police come to talk to you and you go, oh, well, I was angry. And they go, oh, you were angry? No problem. I won't arrest you. And off you go. Right? No, I was angry. I knew what I wanted to do and I stopped it. In fact, when it comes to parenting, one of the biggest problems that people have is because they parent when they're furious. Discipline is supposed to teach kids lessons, not to get a pound of flesh.
Yeah.
What I often say to my kids is, if I yell, you should listen. If I whisper, you should worry. because if I'm whispering, it means I'm not out of control at all. I'm going to be thinking about what punishment I'm going to give you that's going to have the greatest impact. it was only a few decades ago that psychologists came out and talked about how horrible corporal punishment was, and corporal punishment and spanking leads to violent people. Well, okay, guess what? We kind of eradicated corporal punishment. Is the world any less violent now than it was 30 years ago?
Probably more.
Probably more. Now you could, and one could argue that corporal punishment wasn't the problem by itself. It was corporal punishment when you were angry that was the issue.
Corporal punishment done badly.
Yeah. And so, I think when I work with perpetrators of domestic violence, very often the men will say, and they're guilty of what they did. They hit their girlfriends or wives or whomever. But very often they would say, I wish she would have hit me first. It would have hurt less than the things that she said. People don't realize, well, he was also 6'4", so the likelihood of, right? But people don't realize that when anger is understandable, there is not a parent on the planet, especially moms that are dealing with toddlers, right, that are not ready to pull their hair out. It's a completely normal thing. Now, the intellectual side is, aren't you so lucky to have a normal child that's exploring the world? And you're like, yeah, but I didn't want them to explore the bleach under the counter, and I have to childproof everything. Parenting is hard. Getting angry is normal. And so, and by the way, I'm not saying that corporal punishment is the be-all, end-all, and this is the only way to teach respect for authority. What I'm saying is that we took a strategy that was used for parenting for hundreds of years and threw it away with the promise of high self-esteem, low violent kids. That's not the world we're living in right now.
Yeah.
Because the corporal punishment by itself is not the problem. It's disciplining when you're furious.
Yeah.
So parents have to learn how to adjust their flame and figure out how to be effective. And by the way, just as we talk about having a hold button, these days, the intervention strategy that people have talked about for decades now of using a timeout when the child is misbehaving, right? Put them on the snare, don't reinforce them, give them time to think about what they're doing. I would argue the reverse timeout is even more important. The parent needs to put themselves in their room, separate themselves from the stimulus, so long as the kid's safe. Cool your jets, get back down to a rational, all right, I understand why I'm so angry at my kid right now. They do need to be punished. How can I be effective? And how do I adjust my mood so that I'm more effective in it? And because when I first started writing this book, I thought I was going to be writing for angry young men, because I was somewhere along the line, I went from being an angry young man to an angry old man. I don't know when that happened, but there's this stigma that men are angry and women are not. And that's just bull. It's just not true. I do think that in previous generations, women and girls were more socialized to internalize their emotions, and boys were socialized to externalize them. I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think girls are struggling with anger just as much as boys are. I think boys, one of the problems that they deal with is they're angry and they're supposed to be, so they don't check themselves. And that's where, I think that a big problem that we have across the globe is there's not enough boys being taught how to be men by men. And what is it that children need from parents? They need padded fences. They need boundaries that are set in stone, but they're padded.
They're padded,
so that when they run against them, they don't get hurt. Although a colleague of mine in the prison system gave me another analogy that I thought was really interesting. He goes, yes, but when you're dealing with really deviant behavior, you need more than that. I said, what do you need? He goes, you need wider pastures, but electrified fence.
Wow.
Okay.
meaning they're going to need to find their way. But if they go too far, they're going to find themselves hurt. And so the hope is that people find themselves before they get seriously hurt.
Get hurt.
Wow. So much.
I know. I'm conscious of the time. I can't believe an hour is gone already, and so much that we could keep talking about. I guess a couple of questions, Mitch. I'm really curious. What got you into this area in the first place?
My mother.
60 to 30-second answers.
I see. I'm guilty. Look, I was like the poorest kid in a very poor neighborhood. And had the good fortune of being um, money poor but family rich.
Mhm.
Now, when you're angry that the holidays come and your birthdays come and you don't get any presents and everyone else does, and it wasn't because my parents didn't love me; they couldn't afford it. So
Mhm.
here I was, a very angry kid, and the people that I wanted to blame for it, I couldn't blame for it because I loved them.
Mm.
And so I'm about 13 years old at the time, and I'm raging to some music. What does a 13-year-old boy rage to? Probably some girl that he liked that was ignoring him or something. Anyway, so I'm listening to loud, rageful music, and my mom walks in the door behind me and says, "Mitch." And she startled me. You know the folding chairs, the wrought iron folding chairs that now you only see in like wrestling shows? Well, I
Mhm.
didn't realize she was behind me, so she startled me. And I kind of ripped it in half, like right at the hinge. It was the only time in my life I ever saw my mom scared.
Wow.
And she's been dead for a long time now. Even when she was dying, she was never scared. That day she was scared. And she looked at me and she said, "Mitch, you better get that shit under control or you're going to ruin your life."
Mm.
That was the first time I realized. It was the first time I became consciously aware of my anger and
Mm.
consciously aware of how I can hurt and destroy things.
Mm. Mm.
Um, there were several other steps along the way, but that's where it really first started. Um, you see, I grew up in a neighborhood where I saw a lot of death, a lot of kids get killed. My sister died when she was 20 years old she was
Sorry to hear.
diabetic. She had a
Mhm.
heart attack.
Mm.
There's endless stuff. This is not just my story.
Mm. Mm.
People have things in their lives that are going to hurt.
Mhm.
And a very common, there's a phrase people say, hurt people,
Yeah.
right? But that's also not true because not everybody that's hurt winds up hurting other people.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think we need to be
A lot of
mindful
it.
of the fact that anger is a natural response to a lot of stressors. And it wasn't until I was working in a gym at the time and I had a lot of bad stuff in my head and we were all weightlifting and I was out lifting everyone. And the reason I was able to do that is I was summoning the images of my sister being dead, the
Mm.
bad
Mm.
things I saw. And
Mm.
that got me energized in a way similar to the mom who sees their kid under the car that's able to lift them up. And
Mm.
that's when I
Mm.
started to realize, holy crap, this is not necessarily destructive. This can
Yeah.
make you superhuman
Mm.
if you learn how to control it.
If you learn
Because
how to
after
control
Mhm.
that lift, if someone came up to me and said something bad about
it.
me, I'd probably, punch them. So
Yeah.
then that led me to my career in the field where I kind of rounded out the rough edges. But that's what set the stage for me both realizing the danger of my anger as well as how powerful it could be as an ally when we learn to harness it.
When
Wow.
harnessing it.
Serious power there.
Uh,
Mitch, there's so much that we've covered, so much more we'd love to talk about.
Well, just ask the question we like to ask is there anything that you really wanted to share that we've not been able to talk about yet?
Mm.
Just
Thank you
anything
for
you
that
think.
opportunity. I think it ends where it started. This book is really about hoping that people find some relief,
Mhm.
some reassurance that this world is kind of crazy and difficult, and we all get pissed off, and we don't have to destroy ourselves and our self-esteems about these things, but instead recognize that there's no such thing as a bad emotion. All emotions are good. They're part of who we are. Anger is demonized. It shouldn't be. Own it. Allow yourself to be that way. Forgive yourself for being human and figure out how to use your anger to get what you want in life rather than sabotage the things that you're working on.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
amazing.
I'm not effing angry. Do you have a copy of the book there just to show up? I don't know if you have one at hand. There you go. It's out there.
If you notice, it's actually there's no you there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We were mindful of the censors.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Absolutely.
but
But puff
it's
of smoke,
difficult.
cloud of smoke coming through there. That makes the point.
Well, look, if I can say a parting word, I apologize in advance to your audience because I know that profanity is not for everyone, and I think that we should be sensitive to
Mm.
how people hear what we're saying. I also think it's important that we're honest with ourselves, and I think that people aren't honest with how angry they are. And cursing is one of the ways people often express themselves when they're angry. And so it's certainly not the only way, and it's not always a healthy way. But I'm sensitive to language being something that people care a lot about, and me including that word in the title wasn't to provoke people or to upset them, but more to own the fact that, hey man, we're all in this together. And even if we act like I'm not angry, yeah, you are, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Let's do something about it.
Let's work with it.
Beautiful. There's another book that I'll be getting soon. Mitch.
Listen, I hope it is at least it's as entertaining as it is informative. There's a lot of my life lessons in there, so I hope people find it useful.
I'm absolutely
no doubt
sure
they
we
will.
will. I mean, we're already so aligned and connected. Talking about habits, of the 4 habits, habit 2 is be careful, not crushing, which is this whole topic of how do we deal with anger in those moments when it's wanting to grip us, but it could impact the relationships that we care about.
We say handle conflict carefully. You can make the relationship stronger. Handle it badly. The wheels can come off very, very quickly.
It's all about unpacking
again.
bad habits and replacing them with the better ones, which we will learn diaphragmatic breathing and imagining the waves coming in and going out and thinking about imagining consequences. I think is a powerful addition to that. You know, what would happen if, and your the 5-minute your mama. We'll be remembering that one. Oh no!
Don't ever underestimate the power of mothers.
Exactly.
Indeed.
But Mitch, it's been a real delight having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe we do a part 2 to this one of these days. There's so much that we could unpack.
After we've read the book, we'll be having you on for questions and answers.
I would love that. I mean, look, I think that the more you think about this stuff, the more you unravel it. There's so much there. And I think that people really will get a sense of, oh, really? Yeah. And so I would love to have another opportunity to speak to you and get your thoughts of what resonated and what didn't. I mean, I definitely talk about some controversial things in there. I talk about corporal punishment being demonized inappropriately. I think we don't live in a better society now as a result of getting rid of corporal punishment. And so
we see that around us.
Man, life is hard. Life is hard. We're gonna get angry. Let's get a little better at it.
Indeed. So many lessons. Really looking forward to the next conversation, but we'll read the book first.
Well, thank you to you, and thank you to our audience around the world for joining us yet again. It's been a fascinating episode. Let's take our anger, let's use it for good.
Yeah, it's the conversation for our times, for sure. Really, really important skill for us to develop, how to harness that anger.
Yeah.
Yep.
But for now, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Till the next time. See you again.
See you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe and we'll see you next time.